Are there customers out there today that are willing to pay? Yes, there are. They are not in the majority, but they do exist.
Your customers, are they demanding sustainable solutions? That's question one. And the second question, are they willing to pay for it? Have you noticed this trend?
There's going to be a very, very long transition period from now. And let's just be optimistic. Let's call it 2040 just for sake of argument. And that means that right now there is zero, let's call it TEU miles produced that are genuinely green. And then in a few years from now, there'll be a few thousand TEU miles that are green, and it'll be more and more. Are there customers out there today that are willing to pay? Yes, there are. They are not in the majority, but they do exist. But here's the challenge. If I now have a completely green ship and I have a service from, say, Shanghai to Rotterdam, a standard Asia-Europe service, I might have customers worth, say, 500 TEU out of the 20,000 that are willing to pay on that one service. But those same customers would also be willing to pay for green shipments, not from Shanghai to Rotterdam, but from Hong Kong to Antwerp, or from Hong Kong to Los Angeles. So what we need to find here is a framework of accounting for the green TEU miles. This is how I see the transition take place over the next 20 years. So when a carrier launches a vessel, you will look at, I have now produced this many thousands of TEU miles that are genuinely green. I can then sell them to customers. You don't necessarily physically need to have your container on that ship. That's no different than, here where I sit in Copenhagen, the electricity coming out of my plug over here, I can choose between normal or green. Of course, it's exactly the same electricity, but there has to be an accounting mechanism for this. And that's where it becomes important that there is a standard and a framework built up. So we don't get into a situation where, let's say, a shipping line operates a 5,000 TEU container vessel and sells 1 million green slots. That would be obvious greenwashing. So we need to have a standard set in place for accounting for how many green TEU miles have you produced to make sure you also don't sell more than that. Because then there will definitely be a market and it will gradually grow and you can cater to the customers that are already today willing to pay for it. That finally, with a long detour, brings me to your question, Joe. What should the governments do? I don't see the governments play a role in setting this standard. Mostly from a practical perspective, I find it hard to see the governments necessarily agreeing on such a standard within a time frame that is less than glacial. I think the market will be better able to find in such a mechanism. Where the governments have a role to play is in helping to accelerate this development. And that will predominantly come through, for example, carbon taxation mechanisms, because that will change the incentive mechanism and speed up both the production of green fuels and the incentive to actually ship. And also on this point, I have no illusion that there is going to be a global carbon tax. That's just not going to happen. It is going to be regional. It's going to be different. EU is going to do one thing. US would like to do something else. Korea will do something third. Australia will do their own thing, so on and so forth. That will be administratively more difficult, but that's for the carriers to handle. But what the governments really can do is to help push in that direction. Where it becomes, let's say, more of a gray area is if you do introduce this carbon taxation, that of course then also introduces the political question, what do you do with that tax revenue? Should that then be used for all sorts of other purposes? Should it go into an investment fund for greening shipping, an investment fund for something else? That is more of a political discussion. But irrespective of what that tax revenue is used for, if you make it more expensive to use the fossil fuels, you will de facto also accelerate the decarbonization process.